So inequalities is when we have smaller than or bigger than, smaller or equal to or bigger and equal to. And what we want to do is solve for x in this scenario. It works similar to solving for x if we were to have 2x plus 6 equal to 2. So what you would do in that situation is you would move the 6 over, and you can do the same with the inequality. So we'll say 2 minus 6. So 2x is smaller than 2 minus 6. And in a normal equation, you'll have 2x is equals to negative 4. So here we would have 2x is smaller than negative 4. And normally you would divide both sides by 2 to say x is equal to negative 2. And that's the same principle that applies in inequalities. So x would be smaller than negative 2. So if you were asked to show this on a number line, you would have a line, have your numbers in, plot negative 2, and then have an open dot to say it's not equal to, and then choose the direction. So x would be smaller than negative 2, and that is all the values on the left-hand side of negative 2. For example, negative 3, negative 4, and so forth. But let us look at a second example where the direction of the inequality would change. So let us say we have negative 2x plus 6 is smaller than negative 2. So we would apply the same principle. We would say negative 2x is smaller than 2 minus 6. Therefore, negative 2x is smaller than negative 4. Now, if we multiply both sides by negative 2, we would have x is bigger than plus 2. Notice that when we divide by a negative, the direction of the inequality changes. Now let me show you why that happens. So if we had negative 2x smaller than negative 4, and we move the negative 2x to the right-hand side, it will become plus 2x. And if we move the negative 4 to the left-hand side, it will become plus 4. And notice now the direction of the inequality hasn't changed because we simply moved the negative 2x to the right and the negative 4 to the left. And you're allowed to do that without changing the inequality. Now, in order to solve for x, I can divide both sides by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and that is smaller than x. So these two results of x bigger than plus 2 or 2 smaller than x is the exact same result. So you read the inequality from the position of x. So x would be bigger than 2. And that is why the direction of the inequality changes when we divide by a negative 2. So it's because when we take the negative 2 and make it positive on the right-hand side, you can see that x is simply on the other side of the inequality, and we read the inequality from the position of x. So x would be bigger than 2. Let us look at one more example. So let us say we have 2x plus 6 smaller than 2 as we've had before, but also bigger than negative 4. So if I ignore the left-hand side, I would have 2x plus 6 smaller than 2, and I can move the 6 to the right-hand side, and that becomes minus 6. So therefore we have 2x is smaller than negative 4. And if I divide both sides by 2, I say x is smaller than negative 2. Now, what I want you to do when we work with these double inequalities is to do one side at a time. So let's imagine that this is gone now, and we want to solve for x. So if we repeat those calculations, first we took over the 6, then we said negative 10 is smaller than 2x, and I divide both sides by 2, so x is bigger than 5. And if I bring my first solution back, I can see that in both cases, I repeated the calculation. So my first step is to take the 6 over, then I had a solution, and then I divided both sides by 2. And that's all that you do with a double inequality. You solve the one side first, and then you solve the other side, keeping the x in the middle.